Aisha was a bright, soft-spoken girl from a small town called Kambwe. Everyone who knew her always said she had a light in her, the kind of hope that could light up a room. She had dreams bigger than her village, and had even earned a scholarship to study abroad. But before she could take that path, she fell in love. Luando was her college sweetheart. He was charming, funny, and made her feel like the only girl in the world. When he asked her to marry him, she said yes without hesitation. She believed in love. She believed in him. So, with her heart full and eyes full of dreams, Aisha packed her bags, left behind her scholarship, and moved with him to Lusaka, into his family's home. In the beginning, everything felt magical. Luando was kind and attentive. He brought her flowers, made her tea, and told her how lucky he was to have her. Aisha would write in her journal, "This is what happiness feels like." She spent her days helping around the house, learning to cook from his mother, and picturing the life they'd build together. But something changed when she found out she was pregnant. Instead of joy, Luando grew distant. His sweet words became silence. His warm eyes turned cold. Aisha didn't understand it. Wasn't this supposed to be a happy time? She held on to hope, believing he was just overwhelmed. But deep down, her heart had already started to break. The girl who once left Kambwe full of dreams had no idea that her journey of love was about to turn into a storm. At first, Aisha kept telling herself things would get better. Maybe Luando was just stressed. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was just a phase. But as the weeks passed, something in him changed. He started coming home later and later. No calls, no messages, just silent. When she asked if he was okay, he would sigh loudly or ignore her completely. He stopped eating the food she cooked. Even when she made his favorite dishes, the ones he used to praise with a smile, he would push the plate aside or say, "I'm not hungry." Some days, he didn't even look at her. When she asked if she had done something wrong, he snapped, "You've changed." That word stayed with her. Changed. But all she had done was love him, carry their baby, and try to make a home. Aisha started crying herself to sleep. Alone in their room, with his side of the bed cold and untouched, her tears became her only company. Her belly was growing, and with every kick from the baby, she felt a strange mix of love and fear. Love for the little life growing inside her, fear of the world she was bringing it into. Then came the night that would haunt her forever. It was raining hard, the kind of rain that pounds on the roof like angry fists. Aisha had gone out to buy bread and some vegetables, hoping maybe a warm dinner would soften Luando's mood. She returned soaked, tired and shivering, only to find the front gate locked. No key under the mat, no spare hidden anywhere. She knocked softly at first, then harder, then harder. She called his name, over and over, no answer. Lights were on inside. She knew he was there, but he didn't come, not even to check. As the cold wind blew against her wet clothes, she sank to the ground, her back against the gate, one hand on her swollen belly, the other wiping her tears. She whispered, "Please, Luando, please." But there was only silence, cold, heartless silence. That night, Aisha slept outside, 6 months pregnant, curled up under a small ledge trying to stay dry. Her bones ached, her heart shattered, and yet she held her belly and whispered to her baby, "I'm still here. I won't leave you." The girl who once left everything for love was now being left outside, like she meant nothing. And Luando, he never opened the door. The next night, Aisha returned a little earlier, hoping things would be different. She had taken a long walk to clear her head, praying the rain wouldn't come back. Her body was tired, 6 months pregnant, swollen feet, and carrying more pain than her small frame should ever have to bear. As she reached the gate, she noticed the lights were on again. Her heart fluttered with a tiny hope. Maybe tonight he'd open the door. Maybe he'd hold her and say sorry. Maybe he'd be the man she once knew. She knocked gently, then louder. "Luando, it's me," she called, her voice shaking. Nothing. She tried again. "Please, I'm tired. My back hurts. I just want to come in." Still nothing. Her knuckles started to hurt from knocking, but she didn't stop. She was cold, hungry, and her baby kicked softly inside her, like it too was asking to go home. Suddenly, a soft voice came from behind the wall. A neighbor, an older woman who had always smiled kindly at her before, whispered from her window, "My child, he's inside, but he's not alone. He's with another woman." For a moment, Aisha froze. Her breath caught in her throat. What? She asked, even though she had heard it clearly. The words stabbed her like knives. Her legs began to tremble. She leaned on the gate, her whole body weak. She looked up at the windows. One of them had the curtains drawn, but she could see shadows moving. Laughter, a woman's laugh. Luando's voice, not angry this time, but warm, playful, the voice he used to speak to her with. Aisha backed away from the gate, her hands on her belly. The pain wasn't just emotional now, it felt physical, like her heart was collapsing inside her chest. She walked a few steps, then slowly sank to the ground, right there on the cold cement. She didn't cry loudly, she didn't scream, she just let the tears fall, quietly, endlessly. Her phone was dead, her body was exhausted. She had no one to call, no one nearby, no door to knock on. The street was silent, the kind of silence that feels like it's swallowing you whole. So she curled up by the gate again, the same one that refused to open. Her clothes were damp from the night before. Her hair stuck to her face, and her hands rested gently on her belly, whispering, "I'm sorry. I didn't know it would be like this." Somewhere inside, she felt something break, not just trust, not just love, but a part of herself, the part that still believed he might change, the part that still waited for the door to open. And inside that house, behind the locked gate, Luando laughed with another woman, while Aisha, carrying his child, lay outside in the dark, forgotten. Morning came slowly that day. The sky turned from black to grey, but for Aisha, it didn't matter. She was still lying by the gate, cold, hungry, and barely awake. Her whole body hurt. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her belly felt heavy and sore. Every part of her just wanted to disappear, but somehow, she was still there, holding on. People passed by. Some glanced, most ignored. No one stopped, until one woman did. She was older, maybe in her late 50s, with kind eyes and a strong, confident walk. She wore a colourful chitenge around her waist and carried a basket of groceries. When she saw Aisha curled up by the gate, she stopped right away. "My child," she said softly, kneeling down. "Are you okay?" Aisha looked up, her lips dry, her voice barely a whisper. I have nowhere to go." The woman didn't ask for details. She didn't judge. She simply said, "Come, you can't stay here." She helped Aisha to her feet, one arm around her back, the other holding her basket. Slowly, gently, she walked her home. Her name was Auntie Basa. Her home was small but warm, the kind of place that smelled like freshly cooked food and safety. She gave Aisha a clean towel, a bowl of hot porridge, and a bed to lie in. Aisha couldn't stop crying, not because she was sad, but because for the first time in weeks, someone had treated her like she mattered. Days passed, and Auntie Basa didn't push her for answers. She just cared for her like a mother would. And when Aisha finally opened up and told her everything, the pregnancy, Luando, the gate, the betrayal, Basa didn't shake her head or say, "I told you so." She simply held her hand and said, "You are not alone anymore." A few weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Aisha went into labour. The pain came fast and strong. Basa acted quickly. She boiled water, laid out clean sheets, and stayed by Aisha's side every step of the way. That afternoon, Aisha gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Zuri. Basa cried as she held the baby, calling her our little blessing. For Aisha, it felt like the beginning of a new life, not just for Zuri, but for herself too. As the weeks turned into months, Aisha started helping out around the house. Basa owned a small tailoring shop at the back of her home. Nothing fancy, just a sewing machine, fabric, and years of experience. One day, she said to Aisha, "Come, let me teach you something that no one can ever take away from you." Aisha sat beside her, watching her hands move with skill and care. Thread by thread, stitch by stitch, she began to learn. And as she sewed her first straight line, something inside her stitched itself back together too. In a tiny home filled with fabric scraps and baby laughter, Aisha was no longer broken. She was rebuilding, one thread at a time. Zuri was 3 months old when Aisha got her first idea. She was sitting on the floor, holding her baby close, trying to sew a dress for one of Auntie Basa's customers. Zuri kept fussing, wanting to be held. Aisha tried to balance both, but it was almost impossible. That's when it hit her. What if I could carry her and work at the same time? She looked at the pile of bright chitenge fabric beside her. She picked out her favourite one, yellow and orange with bold patterns, and started cutting. She didn't really know what she was doing, but her hands moved with purpose. She stitched the fabric into something simple but strong, a soft, beautiful baby carrier she could wear on her back. When she tried it on with Zuri inside, her daughter instantly calmed down. It felt right. It felt like freedom. The next day, she wore the carrier to the market. Zuri slept peacefully on her back, while Aisha shopped and picked up fabric for Basa. Women kept stopping her. "Where did you buy that? Can I get one?" "That's so smart and beautiful." One woman took a photo and posted it in a Facebook group for mums. The post blew up. Hundreds of comments, dozens of messages. "Who made this? I want one. Where can I order?" Aisha couldn't believe it. She borrowed Basa's old phone and created a simple page on Facebook. She called her new brand Zuri Back, named after her daughter, and the fact that Zuri had been right there on her back through everything. In just 1 week, she had 20 orders, then 50, then over 100. She was sewing through the night, Zuri sleeping in a basket beside her. Her small room, once quiet and still, became a mini factory, fabric everywhere, needles, thread, packaging. Even Basa joined in, helping her cut patterns and organize orders. She used the money from the first few sales to buy another second-hand sewing machine. Then she hired a young girl from the neighborhood to help with stitching. They played music while they worked. Zuri would giggle in the corner as they danced and sewed. The carriers were not just beautiful, they were meaningful, made by a single mother for other mothers. Every stitch told a story of strength. One night, as Aisha sat counting her orders and rocking Zuri to sleep, she looked around the room and smiled. She remembered the girl who cried outside a locked gate. That girl had become a businesswoman, a creator, a fighter, all from a single idea and a little bit of fabric. Heartbreak had brought her to her knees, but hustle was lifting her back up. One sunny morning, as Aisha worked on a batch of baby carriers, a woman walked into Auntie Basa's yard with a notepad and a small camera bag. She introduced herself as Linda, a journalist from Lusaka Daily. "I've been hearing about Zuri Back all over Facebook," she said with a warm smile. "Mothers are calling it a game changer. And your story, it's powerful. Can I write about you?" Aisha was nervous at first. She wasn't used to attention. She still saw herself as the girl who once slept outside a gate, not someone worthy of headlines. But Linda sat with her, listened to every word, asked about Zuri, about Basa, about how it all started. She didn't just want a story, she wanted the truth. The article came out the next week. The headline read, "From Rejection to Resilience, the Woman Behind Zuri Back." It had a photo of Aisha standing in her little sewing room, with Zuri tied to her back in one of her bright carriers. The response was overwhelming. Her phone didn't stop buzzing. Orders doubled overnight. But it wasn't just customers reaching out. NGOs, women's organizations, and even government workers contacted her. They wanted to support her work. "You're doing something important," they said. "You're not just selling, you're inspiring." One organization offered her a small grant to expand. Another connected her to mentors in business. A third asked if she'd be willing to train other women, young single mothers especially, to sew and start their own businesses. At first, Aisha was scared. "I'm not a teacher," she said. But Auntie Basa smiled and reminded her, "You weren't a tailor either, but you learned, and now others can learn from you." So she said yes. A few months later, she opened the Zuri Back Training Center, a humble but vibrant space just down the road from their home. The walls were painted bright yellow. The tables were lined with second-hand sewing machines. The room smelled of fabric, soap, and hope. 5 women joined the first class, then 10, then more. Some came with babies on their backs, just like Aisha once had. She taught them how to thread a needle, how to use a machine, how to design patterns. But more than that, she taught them to believe in themselves. She also invited women from the business world to teach simple things: how to budget, how to price their work, how to open a bank account. The training wasn't just about sewing, it was about starting over. Every evening, as she locked up the training center, Aisha looked back and smiled. This wasn't just her dream anymore. It was a doorway for many others. She had turned her pain into a platform, and it all started with one baby, one carrier, and one woman who chose to rise. One morning, Aisha was riding on a minibus to the market when the driver suddenly pointed at a billboard by the side of the road. "Mama Zuri, that's you," he laughed. Aisha looked up, and there it was, her own face, smiling, strong, with Zuri tied to her back in a colorful carrier. The words in bold letters read, From betrayal to business queen, meet the woman behind Zuri Back. It took her a moment to breathe. Her heart pounded. She blinked, thinking maybe she imagined it. But the driver and passengers were already clapping, cheering. "We're proud of you, sister," someone said. That was the first of many. Billboards popped up all across Lusaka, outside malls, at busy intersections, even near her old college. People began recognizing her on the street. Some called her boss lady, others Queen Zuri Back. Strangers would come up just to say, "Your story gave me strength." Mothers especially, single, tired, hopeful, saw her as proof that they could still rise. Then came the invitation she never expected. She was nominated for a National Entrepreneurship Award, the Women of Power Prize. At first, she thought it was a scam. "Me?" she laughed. "I work from a room with 3 sewing machines." But it was real. They had followed her journey. They had seen what she was building. Not just a brand, but a movement. The night of the awards, Aisha stood on stage in a simple but stunning dress made from the same fabric as her baby carriers. Zuri, now 3 years old, sat in the front row beside Auntie Basa, clapping wildly. When Aisha's name was announced as the winner, she froze. For a second, the world felt silent. Then she walked up, tears in her eyes, and held the award in her hands. It was heavy, golden, and beautiful, just like her journey. "This," she said into the mic, her voice shaking, "is for every woman who thought her story was over. It's not. Sometimes the worst part is just the middle." That same week, Zuri started school. Not just any school, but one of the best academies in Lusaka. Aisha had visited 5 schools before choosing this one. She wanted a place that saw Zuri the way she did. Smart, brave, full of magic. On the first day, Zuri wore a tiny pink backpack, and as Aisha kissed her goodbye at the gate, she whispered, "Go and shine, my baby," just like Mama did. Later that evening, as she walked back into her sewing space, now full of machines, laughter, and bright fabric, Aisha sat down for a moment and smiled to herself. She wasn't just making carriers anymore. She was carrying dreams. Her name wasn't just Aisha now. It was a brand, a story, a symbol, and she had written every single line with her own hands. The expo hall was packed, buzzing with energy. Stalls lined up with colourful banners, small business owners showing off their products, and excited crowds moving from one booth to another. At the centre of it all was a wide stage with a large screen that read, "Keynote speaker, Aisha Mwansa, founder of Zuri Back." Aisha stood backstage, fixing the microphone clipped to her dress. She could hear the host introducing her. From a small room in Kanyama to a nationwide brand, "Please welcome the woman who turned heartbreak into empire, Aisha." The applause hit her ears like thunder. As she stepped onto the stage, she held her head high. Dressed in one of her signature African print designs, she looked every inch the business queen the country now knew her as. But deep inside, she still carried the quiet strength of that girl who once slept outside a locked gate. She shared her journey, the pain, the hustle, the joy. People laughed, clapped, even wiped tears. When she finished, they rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Cameras flashed. It was a moment of triumph. And then she saw him, standing near the back of the crowd, just beyond the lights. Luando. Her heart skipped. He looked so different, thinner, tired. His once smooth face was now lined and older than his age. He didn't have the shine he used to carry. No fancy watch, no expensive shoes. Just a plain shirt, eyes full of something between shame and hope. After the event, he waited near the exit. As she walked out with her assistant, he stepped forward. "Aisha," he said, voice low. She turned, calm but unreadable. "Luando, I saw your billboard. Then I read about this expo. I had to come." He paused. "I messed up. I was stupid. I left someone amazing because I didn't see what I had. Everything fell apart after you left. The other woman left. I lost my job. I lost everything." Aisha didn't say a word. She just looked at him. This man, the same one who had locked her out in the rain, who let her beg at the gate while he held someone else inside, was now standing before her, empty-handed. "I'm not asking for much," he continued. I just want to say I'm sorry. I was wrong." A moment passed. Aisha gave a small smile, but it wasn't the soft, sweet smile he once knew. It was the smile of a woman who had walked through fire and come out stronger. She turned to the security guard standing nearby. "Please escort Mr. Luando out." The guard blinked, then nodded. Luando's mouth opened slightly, as if to say more, but no words came out. Aisha didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her silence, her peace, her presence, they said everything. He had once shut her out of his world. Now, he wasn't even allowed into hers. Luando stood frozen, his eyes wide, as the security guard stepped toward him. Aisha didn't flinch. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. Her face stayed calm, almost gentle, but her words carried weight that hit harder than any shout ever could. "Escort Mr. Luando out." The guard nodded without hesitation. Luando opened his mouth as if to argue, to plead, but no sound came. For a second, he looked like he might drop to his knees. But Aisha didn't move. She just stood there, tall, poised, holding her handbag in one hand, her piece in the other. She didn't need revenge. She already won. People in the hallway paused to watch. Some recognized him. A few had read her story, seen the old photos, remembered the girl who had once sat outside a locked gate, pregnant and crying. Now, that same girl stood in heels, in power, in silence, and the man who turned her away was the one being turned out. The irony was thick, almost too perfect. The universe had written its own poetic ending. Luando finally spoke. "Please, Aisha, just listen. 1 minute." She tilted her head slightly, eyes steady. "You had your minute," she said quietly. "You used it to leave me outside in the rain. No anger, no hate, just facts." And that was worse than yelling. Her calm made him shrink. He looked around, hoping someone would step in. No one did. He took a deep breath. "I've changed. I have nothing now. I came here to apologize." "I believe you," she said softly, "but my healing didn't need your apology. It needed me." With that, she turned and walked away. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. Like a woman who had a full schedule, a child to pick up, lives to inspire. She didn't look back. The guard walked Luando toward the exit. He didn't fight it. He just kept looking over his shoulder, as if hoping she'd change her mind. But she didn't. She didn't need to. As she got into her car, her assistant asked, "Do you feel better now that he's seen what you've become?" Aisha smiled, buckling her seatbelt. "This wasn't for him to see. It was for me to live." The car pulled off, and the expo building faded behind her. She glanced at her phone. A message from Zuri's teacher. Zuri shared with the class today that her mommy is a superhero. Aisha chuckled softly, a tear slipping down her cheek. The past had knocked her down, but grace, not revenge, had carried her forward. The man who once shut the door on her no longer had the power to enter her story. She had written her own ending, and it was nothing short of legendary. Years had passed, but Aisha never forgot where she came from. The cold night outside the gate, the hunger, the tears, the fear. But now, instead of pain, those memories gave her purpose. With the money she earned from ZuriBack and the support of partners who believed in her, she started something bigger than just a business. She began building small, safe homes for single mothers, women who had been abandoned, hurt, or left to struggle alone. "They need more than just money," she said. "They need dignity, a fresh start." She called the project Zuri Haven, named after her daughter, who had given her the courage to rise. It wasn't just a shelter. It was a place filled with light, laughter, sewing machines, and warm meals. Each woman who walked through its doors got a bed, a mentor, and a path forward. Skills training, business workshops, counseling, childcare, and love. So much love. One day, Aisha stood on a red circle facing a huge crowd in Johannesburg. It was her first TED Talk. The lights were bright, the room silent, every eye on her. She told them her story, not with bitterness, but with boldness. She spoke of betrayal, of Basa, of baby Zuri, and the brand that changed her life. At the very end, she smiled and said, "He locked me out of his house that night, but no one can lock me out of my destiny." The room erupted in applause. Aisha didn't just build a business. She built a legacy, and she made sure it had enough room for others to rise too.